Question is, do you agree with the statement, educational success is based on test grades?
No, definitely not.
Can you?
Test grades measure how you did one day of your life. And I think there are more factors that measure your success. When I think about my successes, it doesn't come to how well I did on one test, especially a state test.
No, absolutely not.
Can you reflect on that answer?
I think that a test might be one example of something that you would use as a measure, but it certainly is not the only one, it's not the main one. I would like to see much more creative ways of assessing what people know.
No, I don't. I think it's part of the picture. It provides both quantitative, qualitative, diagnostic information that helps teachers and students figure out how they learn best, where they learn best. It gives us a lot of good information about where our curriculum needs fortification or where things aren't up to rigorous enough standards. But I think educational success is defined by a multitude of variables that are different for every single student.
No. No. Educational success is an individual experience, right? So, test grades, especially standardized test grades, only measure the minimum kind of ability level. It doesn't measure any kind of creativity or outside the box thinking or, anything that's actually important to functioning in the world.
The Common Core is a set of high-quality academic standards in mathematics and ELA. These learning goals outline what a student should know and be able to do at the end of each grade. The standards were created to ensure that all students graduate from high school with the skills and knowledge necessary to succeed in college, career, and life, regardless of where they live. In order to fully understand Common Core within our district, I interviewed our principal, one of our assistant principals, the head of guidance, the head of the English department, and the head of the math department. I felt that choosing this bunch of people would accurately give the opinions of all teachers and administrators in the high school.
The advantages to Common Core, I think, one of them is it really has had an impact on teachers to get them to really focus and look at their curriculum, because I'm sure in going through the process of reviewing the curriculum to align to Common Core, it made them rethink some of their lessons and, figure out how they could, present the material differently or so that students are learning the content in a different way.
I guess it would not be a bad idea if we could measure pretty generally what a whole group of people know as opposed to what individuals know. Would it be good to have I guess the bottom line answer is I don't see a whole lot of advantage to it, but I see that there would be some consistency. For example, we study U.S. history. Everyone might have some sense of that in a curriculum that was the same. So you get states publishing curriculums. It would just be the nation publishing a curriculum. It could work. It's not the most exciting thing that should be going on in school.
The advantages to me of Common Core so far have been it's allowed for really deep, rich conversation about education with and among and between the parents and the teachers and the administrators. And although there are a lot of dissenting opinions about Common Core, it's still allowed for force that conversation, whereas before that conversation, happened less often with, less passion because it wasn't right over your head and something you had to do. So it was, to me, I've been in a lot of really interesting, intriguing, thought-provoking conversations because of it.
In 2009, the Common Core curriculum was finalized. Today, 43 states, 4 territories, and Washington, D.C. all adopted the program. What many do not know is that by adopting Common Core, states receive extra funding for their public schools. Many people against the system view it as restricting teaching and learning freedoms for more money.
I think some teachers have felt that a lot of the time constraints, especially since we're really using the modules without a textbook. We're really focused on what the modules say. I have to get this done in 45 days. or I have to spend 45 days on just this topic. So if you're going by the state plan and they say you have to do this in one day, you have to do this in 5 minutes, some of their expectations are not very clear, and some of them are, no student is going to produce this as their first attempt within 5 minutes. This is an activity that I might do in 30 minutes. Not all of us have block scheduling. We don't have the time to implement it with that, with those constraints. Someone's absent, then there goes the whole lesson plan. You got to be prepared for snow. You got to be prepared for delays, fire drills. You have to have that wiggle room in your schedule, and I don't think packing all of these topics into 1 year is the smart thing to do.
No. Because I'm probably, two reasons. One, I don't think the English curriculum here at the high school wasn't particularly affected by a lot of the changes. It was, kind of, yes, in a bragging way, the English curriculum at the high school on all levels is pretty challenging in every course. And it's pretty unique in thinking outside the box, getting you guys to talk and think for yourselves and all of that.
I have issues with anybody trying to maintain control based on their political interests. I think Common Core is a very political document. It's politicians interfering with educators, saying this is what everyone should know, this is when they should know it, this is how they should know it. And I just have a basic human rights issue with that. It's a little bit of I don't necessarily want the government interfering to that extent in our lives.
I think the disadvantages were there was too much coming too fast, and it didn't allow for people to fully buy into it, build from it. I think there, the modules that went up on Engage New York, and there was great stuff there, but I think if there were more time, if things went at a slower pace, it wouldn't be like building the airplane while you're flying it. You'd be ready, you'd have the right resources, you'd have the right materials ordered. People would have time to wrap their heads around it, augment curriculum, and because it was so rapid, it didn't exactly allow for that, and teachers adapted wonderfully and students adapted as well, but it certainly was a challenge.
8th grade is one of the few grades who remember the transition from the old program to Common Core. I decided to interview 8th graders for their opinions.
It was much easier and you didn't feel as pressured to really get to know things in a really short amount of time before we had our standardized tests, and it was really less stressful.
Everything was like this, it was easy, it was good to learn, and it was all in your head, and you did well on tests, and it was still a bit of a challenge so you could do well in school.
Well, teachers used to give a lot of different projects and stuff, and it was more fun, and I thought it was easier to learn and everything. And now it's just teaching to the test, and I don't like it. And there's all these Engage New York packets, and they're always wrong.
A big difference we noticed was that before all of the teachers gave us projects and let us be creative, and now they just teach to the test and they give us rubrics on how to make themselves look good instead of helping us.
Do you find any of the subjects harder because of Common Core now, specifically one of them?
Math. When it comes to Common Core, yeah, math, definitely.
Math.
After hearing all 6 girls declare that math was the hardest, I asked Ms. Ingram to respond to their answers.
I definitely agree, and as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the high school topics were moved down into the middle school, because I think before Common Core in 6th and 7th grade, and I'm speaking, I've never taught middle school math, there was a lot of redundancy. So there was a lot of, well, you did this before, but you didn't really get it, so we're doing it again, instead of just putting the extra layer on top of it. But when you add that extra layer, that's assuming that you did it right the first time, that you understood it the first time. And now Common Core is just moving on with that expectation. Well, you understand it and you remember it. So it's a whole year later. Well, I've learned other academic subjects. I'm doing sports. I'm doing all of these other things. I don't remember it in 5 minutes to move on to that next layer.
Countries that have higher global rankings on education use a unified system. Do you think that Common Core could be a solution to higher education ranks for the U.S.?
I really don't think it's going to be. I guess I'm betraying my general disappointment with Common Core. On the face of it, not a bad idea, just the way it's worked out isn't really very workable. I don't think that we should be comparing ourselves to other countries, for example, because they're all so different. We have the most diverse of any of those populations, and we have our own problems with that diversity. As you can see, if you look at the inner city or the rural schooling areas where people are disadvantaged to a very great extent, you can't put us over, Turkey or Finland or Afghanistan and say, well, that's a similar experience. It just doesn't, those kinds of comparisons I don't think work.
Yeah. It's all based on test scores, and it's making decisions based on test scores. And I don't think that's a good representation of who students are and how successful they will be in life just on how they do on these test scores. So I don't really see the correlation there.
No, because in other countries they skim off the top. They take their best students and allow them to attend higher institutions of learning, and they test those kids. We test everybody. We don't select, we don't pick off the top, we don't take the top kids and say, okay, you guys can go to school, you guys will have to learn this trade, or you guys will have to become street sweepers, and we don't do that, right? We're about equal opportunities, and those kinds of tests don't measure equal opportunities, they only measure the cream of the crop in other countries.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the impetus behind it is to do that, but the key word there is the unification, and nobody's unified as of yet. So the way everyone approaches curriculum can be different. Each state approaches it differently. Standards are different. So until we have some sort of a unified approach that is fully implemented, fully in place in all departments and all grade levels, it's a question that doesn't have a clear answer.
I think Common Core could bring us higher because you're constantly spiraling with the work. So you're drawing on what we did in the 6th grade, what we did in the 7th grade, and now we're applying it to the high school. So we've done this before, we're just going to build on top of it, and I think that's important, especially with math. I think it'll take a while before you're seeing a big result.
This year, a big component of our ELA class has been practicing first aid tests and learning how to get 4s on everything. And our teacher has not been trying to help us individually on our skills.
Well, there's a Russian guy who died in the 1930s. His name is Vygotsky, and he was kind of a philosopher. And he said, learning is shared problem solving. So when I walk into a classroom or talk with teachers, I'm saying, what problem have you created for your students today that they can probably solve if they work hard together? Collaboratively, shared problem solving. When I come into a classroom, I say to kids, what are you working on? And they'll say what it is, and I'll say, how hard is it? Not that hard. My response is, we'll make it harder next time. Okay, because we're really capable of hard work around here. So I think teachers should be challenging students all the time. More, better, faster. We're up to it. We're smart people. We can do it. We just aren't always called upon to do it. So more thought-provoking teaching.